call this meeting to order. It is a Board of Finance meeting. Please stand and join us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as I mentioned when I gavelled the meeting to order, this is the yearly Board of Finance meeting that we're required to have per Indiana code. It will be very short and quick, and then we'll proceed with the regular meeting for the month of January. So the first item is election of the Board of Finance. Mr. Chatton.
Members of the board, Indiana law requires the Board of Finance to meet annually after the first Monday in January and on or before the last day of January per Indiana Code 5-13-7-6. At this meeting, the Board of Finance must elect the president and secretary. Typically, this is the board president and vice president. Also during this meeting, the board is to receive and review the school corporation's investment report, if any, as required by Indiana Code 5-13-7-7. And our first order of business, to elect the Board of Finance.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to elect the president, the board president, board vice president as the Board of Finance for calendar year 2019. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item is to receive and review an investment report, which we do not have one.
We have none.
We don't have any. It's been years since we've had any investments. So we will move on from that item, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Finance meeting. Motion is second to adjourn the Board of Finance meeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. We are adjourned from Board of Finance. Now, well, I call the meeting our regular meeting for the month of January 2019. First item is School Spotlight and the Lions Club Vision Annual Vision Screening Report. Dean Strome.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Superintendent Chapman. He has increased my time that I had to speak to you tonight, and I appreciate the additional time. He moved it from 15 seconds last year to 30 seconds. I'll try to do my best, okay? Thank you very much. Anyhow, Dr. Rutan is here with me tonight. He serves as our training officer and compliance officer. Make sure that all of our screeners are trained before we go out to the schools, and also keeps us in line with any changes, deletions, additions to the Indiana code that governs our screening program. So with that in mind, we started out in early October, ended up just a little bit before Thanksgiving with the 11 school corporations that we visit now. And South Vermillion was always our first that we come to, and you had the report before you. We began this program in 2007, so this is our 12th year that we've been doing this screening. And during that time, we've done 6,592 screenings of your students with 1,852 referrals. And we've had 8 cases that required additional training by Dr. Judson down in Terre Haute. Usually when we first started out years ago, that started costing us about $5,500 per student because it was 45 weeks, about $140 per week. Doc has negotiated with Doc Judson and has got that down to about half. It's about $2,700. But so far we've put, just in those 8 cases, close to $28,000 in vision treatments to students here at South Vermillion. That's 8 students. We picked up our 9th one just this fall, but we're working with the young man at Ernie Powell that's in the 1st grade. So that figure will jump next year, of course, and we're willing to help wherever we can as long as our finances allow us to do so. We get our finances from club project. We assess 5% off of every project. However, with our fire 2 years ago, we haven't had dinners, we haven't had a lot of projects, so our income has sort of dwindled. We're still able to help those, and we do have money to help our child out at Ernie Pop. We started at Central School on page 2, you'll notice. The only alarming thing there, in the first grade, we ended up screening 47 students and 12 failed or were referred. So that's about a fourth. In that, we had one that was or two students we found at 2100, which is partially blind. Now hopefully with the referrals going out to the parents, they'll take care of that, and we won't have that problem when we see him again in 2 years in the third grade. Also, the Stereopolis test revealed 2 that had trouble with depth perception, finding things at the end of the counter or the desk, what have you, maybe trouble seeing the board. So we had 2 that failed the Stereopolis test. They were in the first grade. Third grade, the only alarm that we saw there was, of course, we had 4 that were tested at 20/50. That tells us there's something going on with that student's eyes, because if you look across there, when we saw that student or saw those students in 2016, we only had 1 in that category. So somewhere between that first grade and third grade, it could be due to additional iPads, computers, what have you, strain on the eye. We picked up 3 more in that category, and we picked up 1 that was not legally blind, but partially blind at 2100. Fifth grade, at Central, we saw some improvement in the 2100. At third grade in 2016, we had 4 students that was 2100. This year we had 0, so that tells me that the parents jumped on those referrals and got them corrected. Same with the 2200, we had 4 on page 3 in 2016 as third graders, and we got that down to 1 this year. 2200 folks, that's legally blind by the state standards. So it could be that one child, he's never going to have, he or she, whoever they are, will never have correct vision. Hopefully that's not the case. Van Dyne, grade 1, no problems there. Grade 3, we found 3 students that were legally blind in the third grade. That did not show up in the first grade when we screened them. Now, whether they're new students, we don't know, because we don't keep track of names or anything, we just do the numbers. And there again, we had 3 that failed the Stereopolis, which is an indicator that something's going on there. Whether it's the same 3 that failed the 2200, I don't know, but we ended up with 3 at 2200 in the third grade and 3 that failed Stereopolis. So hopefully those numbers will increase next year, where they've gotten some training or some treatment. Fifth grade at Van Dyne, one remarkable thing is that in the third grade we had 4 in 2016 that tested at 20/50, down to 1. There again, parents jumped on, but we picked up 1 at 2100. So there again, maybe they'll get some help and get those corrected. Ernie Pyle, grade 1, we had 3 at 2100 in the first grade. I don't know what happened there, because a lot of times we see very few referrals in the first grade, because a lot of the kids have been through our preschool screening we do at the daycare, so maybe those students are not involved in those programs, or something's going on there that needs more advanced training and treatment. Third grade at Ernie Pyle, there again, when we tested the third grade as first graders in 2016, we had one at 2100. This year we found 4. We picked up 3 there. And we have one at 2200, which we had when they were at 2016 in the third grade. So here again, if that's the same student, we may not be able to find anything to correct his vision. It may be too late, or he has a problem that we can't correct. Fifth grade at Ernie Pyle, one noticeable thing was the 2200 or 100 had dropped from 1 to 0 this year. Okay. Now we move to the middle school, grade 8, and this is where it's a lot of changes there because the kids have been tested 4 years. We've seen that for 4 years. They get to the middle school, and especially for the females, it's not fashionable to wear glasses. So when you tell them or ask them, where's your glasses, they're in the locker, or they're at home, or they don't know. So those numbers fluctuate considerably. The other thing that we see in the 8th grade, it's been 3 years since we've tested those students, so a lot can happen during that time. The only thing there, you had a lot at 2040, 13, you had 8 at 2050, 5 at 2070, and you had a decrease from 3, the last time we saw them as 5th graders in the 2100 to 1 this year. But look at that bottom 2200. I think here we're dealing with the same student, because when we saw them in the 1st grade, they tested at 2200. 3rd grade 2200, 5th grade 2200, and 8th grade 2200. If that's the same child, probably nothing to be done. And I don't mean this the way it sounds, but probably the only thing that he can look forward to is a sight dog or a white cane. So it's tragic. To lose your eyesight at any age is tragic, but definitely to lose it as a child was equal. Since we began this program with all the 11 school districts we visit each year, we've screened 17,507 kids with 4,212 referrals. So our program is growing. We go as far as Crawfordsville now. They've asked us to come back each year, and we picked up a new school this year, Sugar Creek Elementary. It's actually in Putnam, Putnam, Montgomery County, isn't it? Sugar Creek? I don't know, it's over outside of Crawfordsville, I know that, out in the country. So that's our program. Doc has a project that we hope that the board will entertain a favorable vote to partner with us. We've had a great partnership for 12 years with this program. We want it to continue, and he has a program he'd like to share with you, and I think you have a copy of his report. So I went over my 12s. What will I get next year?
That was like about 37 seconds.
Deduct that next year.
Any questions on my part?
No, thank you. One question I had here is about the student that you say at the 2200 in 8th grade. Wouldn't we know if that was a student from earlier on?
You could probably check with the nurse at each of those schools who tested at 2200 in the elementaries in 2011 when we were there.
But we don't know it's the same student.
No, we only, like I say, we only keep track of the numbers. The forms that we have, both copies of the form goes back to the nurse. One she can use to send as a referral, the other she keeps for her record. we don't capture any of the data on the form other than if the student passed or failed.
Good, thanks.
Okay.
Kudos
Thanks, Dean.
to the Lions Club.
I just wanted to piggyback on the Dean's report, and I would like to mention this is my very first presentation under my brand new title of Training and Compliance Officer, which I've been assured will include a nice raise. There was mentioned it's like 6 figures. I just assumed those were all zeros. But we'll skip back a couple of things. The beginning of Dean's report, we talked about having some kids that we referred for vision therapy to Dr. Judson, who's a doctor we work with in Terre Haute. These are kids that just putting glasses on them isn't going to do the trick. They've got some eye muscle problems. They may have a condition called amblyopia, also a lot of times called lazy eye, where one eye just doesn't focus as well as the other one because there's a big difference between the two of them. Those things need a little bit more in-depth work than just put some glasses on them and all of a sudden everything's great. Also includes a little bit more cost as well. I think the most recent one we've looked into, we got the cost down to about $2,800, something along those lines. But still a lot more than the club can take on. Other than, putting glasses on a kid, we do that all the time. I provide the exams at no cost. And doesn't really set us back too much. But some of those bigger projects, we've worked with other community organizations in recent years or past years trying to raise funds. We've recently been invited to apply for a grant from International Paper. They were excited about some of the work we did. They heard some of the Dean's reports as well and invited us to apply. When we're going to do so, you have to have a 501c3 status to be able to receive funds from them for their tax purposes. The Lions Club by itself falls under a different set of the IRS codes. We're a 503c2. So we wouldn't qualify to those, and we reached out to the Lions Club, which we work with, and some other organizations, and we've not been able to come up with a 501c3 to act as a conduit, or basically a pass-through account, to help us obtain some funds through the International Paper. So we would like to ask your consideration of possibly acting as a conduit on our behalf with the International Paper to try and seek some funds from them. Mostly will go to all goes towards the Vision Fund, towards some of these other kids. And any consideration you would give us on that, we'd appreciate it.
So there's a motion in place?
I think we do unanimous consent. I don't know if it requires board, I know that it requires board action,
I
yeah.
don't think so either.
But, I mean, without exception, I don't know why. I don't know why we even,
Cindy?
why we would.
You just have to keep that as a separate fund, like a clearing account, as that money comes in and then pushed out. So basically, they're wanting to use this as a pass-through type of funding source.
Do we need a resolution to do
No.
that?
No, as long as the board minutes, if you're going to do that, then that shows that I can set up that fund when those funds are received. They'll come into
And there's no
corporations through
problem with
International
the way
Paper.
we've had to decide the education fund, that sort of thing?
No,
No.
no. Several of the schools have gotten grants from International Paper and they ran through that. I mean, they're obviously go back to the school, but in your case, it would actually, you're talking about coming through and going to
Going to
directly
the
to the
fund,
Lions Club.
And as far as my understanding is, all we do is fill out a letter there's someone in the packet there with information and such, and we take
Yeah.
all that fill applying on our end.
I would say let the minutes show, unless there's any objection by unanimous consent, the board supports entering in, Mr. Chapman entering into said agreement with the Lions Club and issuing a letter of, there's a sample letter in there, so.
We certainly appreciate that, we'll put it to good use, assuming we get some. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest that we invite you back on an annual basis with Mr.
Well, as long as I'm able to keep my title, I'd be happy to do that.
And your wages.
In the invite, we'll say, vision training and compliance officer.
It sounds good anyway.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to the Lions Club. One of the best community service organizations I've ever seen. Okay, so that was this month's spotlight. Next item is recommendation to approve our agenda this evening.
So, we do have an addendum.
We do have one addenda, short addenda for you. Let's see.
Thank you all.
So we do have one addenda that adds a field trip to the list of field trips that we didn't have, or that we had on the previous agenda as published, so
My motion would be to approve the agenda and the addendum.
thank you. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
A motion is second to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. This brings us to the first call for citizens' comment period. If anybody in the audience would like to address the board on an agenda item this evening, now would be your chance to do so. If you're interested in addressing the board, please stand, state your name for the record. Hearing no citizen comments, we'll close citizen comment period and move on to consideration of the minutes of the executive session school board meeting and the regular session school board meeting and addendum on December 17th, 2018, the annual reorganization school board meeting and public hearing held on January 2nd, 2019, and the special session school board meeting held on January the 10th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the before mentioned meetings. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item, moving on to finance. Vouchers for the month of January.
So now the great experiment starts, right, with the education fund and,
Operation.
operation fund.
Yes. This particular one, because it was included December vouchers, also the actual funds at the end of your report shows general fund and all, because those were expended in 2018. The next voucher report will strictly be the operations of the education fund.
Good, yeah, thanks.
I move we approve vouchers 98674 through 98822. Second.
A motion is second to approve vouchers 98674 through 98822. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item, recommendation to approve the resolution to transfer a portion of the educational fund balance to the operations fund.
Members of the board, please note with the new budget format, it's necessary for the board to approve the resolution and the transfer of a portion of the funds from the education fund to the operations fund. The following resolution will be read and approved by, per Indiana code, as a matter of record. Resolution goes as follows. Resolution to transfer a portion of education fund balance to operations fund. Whereas the Board of School Trustees is the governing body of the South Vermillion Community School Corporation of Vermillion County, Indiana, and whereas House Bill 1009 requires the governing body of each school corporation to establish an education fund for the payment of expenses allocated to student instruction and learning under Indiana Code 20-42.5, and whereas House Bill 1009 required the governing body of each school corporation to establish an operations fund for the payment of expenses that are not allocated to student instruction and learning under Indiana Code 20-42.5, and therefore be it resolved that the Board of School Trustees authorizes the treasurer of South Vermillion Community School Corporation to transfer the amount of $1,878,669 from the education fund to the operations fund to cover those operating overhead expenses previously expensed through the former general fund. This resolution duly made and seconded, hopefully, and adopted on this 21st day of January 2019.
You've heard the resolution. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as read. Any further discussion?
I have taken the opportunity to go out and look at the dashboard for our site and several other sites around us. I think this is a good step. I know it puts more effort on us especially Cindy, but I think it's a good effort by the state, very few that they put out. But this is a good one to be able to identify, you know, the cash flows by the school corporations. So if you get a chance to go out to the site and take a look at those, go out and take a look at them. You'd probably eat it up. I mean, you'd probably enjoy
Been there,
it.
done that.
So, just wanted to share with you that I had done that, and I think you'd, behoove you to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on, personnel report for January.
Members of the board, the personnel report for January 2019 is in your board packet. I'd like to highlight the following items under certified staff. The retirement of Diane Kane, Van Dyne Elementary School teacher, to be effective at the end of the 2018-19 school year. Diane will have served the school corporation 34 years. Also under classified staff, Michelle Bagetto, transportation clerical assistant, elimination of this position effective the end of the day, January 18, 2019. This is due to the funding constraints that part of that is pushing over, and our operations fund is tight. And Cindy can go into details if you like, but it's something that we've struggled with, that we need to, we're not looking at dollars or quarters, we're looking at dimes and nickels and pennies here, and we just have to make sure that we fall in place where we're not in deficit spending in either of our budgets. And this is something that, we've looked at various programs that are non-instructional to make sure that we cover the costs that are necessary.
So will any of those activities that she's done be picked up by someone else, or?
One of the things that we have done is we worked with Steve Clark with our telephone system, and after, correct me if I'm wrong, after 5 rings in the transportation department, if there's no answer, it comes into Stephanie's workstation, so she can answer it in case of emergencies. Otherwise, it'll go to voicemail.
She didn't run transportation software. She didn't do that.
Who? Michelle?
Yeah,
She assisted David Henry with it.
David just doesn't have.
Yeah. He's well versed in Versatrans now, so.
That, I think, was one of the reasons that we put that position on, to make sure someone would be there in case there was a call.
And then it's gonna be pushed into, we got it worked out with Steve Clark to get it pushed to Stephanie's workstation now. In the event that after 5, is it 5 rings? 3 or 5, I forget which.
It wouldn't even be that much, I don't think.
Yeah,
But
but
it hasn't.
she's been getting some of those calls already, so, and it's a matter of,
I mean, are
directly-
we're just talking the 2 hours,
it's 10
we
hours
keep
per week,
dumping everything on Stephanie. How many hours a week?
10 hours per week.
10 hours per week. And is he, are we comfortable now that he
We met
has
with, Cindy and I
coordinated?
met with David, was it last week? And discussed the issues with him, and, another area that, just so that you know, we're not gonna be purchasing any new buses this year, because we need to make sure that we get our budgets lined up. Our bus fleet is excellent. We can forego this year without getting any buses, and that's gonna help us. If we didn't change the budget process, our transportation fund would be in some pretty dire straits. And so this is just an effort to kind of keep the operations fund in check.
Do we have any other cost-cutting measures?
Cindy will,
Let's just do this. Everybody take one
Sorry,
of
guys.
those, and we're gonna go over. So you have a better understanding of how this is actually.
if I might, do you want to continue with this now, or do you want to finish the personnel report first?
Won't take long.
We're,
I mean, either way is fine, I just want to make sure you're clear on where we're at.
yeah, where we're gonna hit,
Dudley's right.
where were you gonna, hold on a second,
Let's see.
yeah. Where else were you gonna handle?
This was basically gonna come in after that resolution, but it is kinda.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you got the personnel report in there, we can just finish it now, that's fine.
Yeah,
Okay, so on the sheet you have in front of you, we've got 4 pages. So the first one gives you, as far as operations, how this is gonna work for 2019. The annual revenue on the left side, that is the breakdown of how the revenue is gonna be generated for operations fund. The general fund transfer that you just approved, the local levy, miscellaneous revenues, which is your license, fees and things like that. And then the transfer, that amount may vary for 2019 from the state tuition. But as a rule, we're looking at $6,800,000. The proposed budget that we asked for, that you approved, if you look on page 3, and notice the taxpayers that was put in the paper, was $5,565,450. If you look at the next page, the last one, the budget order that we received for 2019 was for $3,266,757. That's all the budget can be set for. So back on the front page, if you see our revenue is anticipated to be over $6,800,000, and our budget expenditures $5 million, but they've only approved for the operations fund $3,266,000, which is a deficit of over $2.2 million. Those expenses that we talk about on the front page for the $5,565,000, I've broken that down where that comes into play. As far as the CPF needs, and then there's some details down there of, in general, what those were in the past. Transportation costs, bus replacement. Now, we've also got an increase in the operations fund of the $1,878,000 that the general fund used to pay, now has to be put into operations for all the support staff, which was on that additional information that you had for the resolution, detailed by account. And then increase the budget when we put it on Form 3 of $602,000. So what this amounts to is, right now, the only thing I can do with the budget, can only be $3,266,000, but we need $5,500,000. So, once the transfer is made, and when they approved this, they did not take that revenue into consideration. The transfer that was gonna be made, all they're saying is local levy, this is all you're gonna get, is 3.2 for the local taxpayers. So, once the money's moved over there, and then that revenue and the transfer starts, I will have to ask for an additional appropriation from the state, allowing that money to be spent. So right now, yes, you can't be spending money that they're not allowing us to have because it's not appropriated. But within 2 or 3 months, as this flow works and they're still trying to figure out how these transfers are really, really supposed to be made and submitted through Gateway, which is a whole nother situation. So, long story short, right now, operations fund, there are things that cannot be purchased, cannot be done. Once the transfer is made, and then this revenue starts coming into place, then you'll have to approve an additional appropriation. We're gonna have to do that for debt service too, because the additional debt for the auxiliary gym, but that's a whole other thing. So just FYI, we're not broke, but the money will be there, we just got to do it in
But
the right
mainly
way.
it's a function of establishing the operations fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Because when they approve your budget,
Right.
they don't know what amount you're gonna be transferring. They're just saying, this is all we can say you're gonna get at a local levy, the piece, the taxes. So this other dollars that are coming in from the education, they don't know what that is on an individual basis. And that's all they can say. So, the budget right now is 3.2, and once things are moved and, the
And
next
everyone's in this
month
si-
or two,
Yeah, and everyone's in the same situation, trying to figure out how this thing's gonna work once you establish it.
They're either
Right.
doing that with their operations fund or their education.
Yeah, right.
we happen to be in the situation which will flip-flop. I've talked to Covington and Park County, they're just the opposite, they've had their education fund cut. And they cannot make a transfer, now, out of their education fund into their operations fund, because it's been cut, so.
But the,
So 3
Does that
months.
understand that?
yeah.
See, 3 months timeframe, you
At
think?
the most, yeah.
But the
This-
long-term thing would just be to watch our transportation levy in the future.
There
we are-
really won't be.
No, I mean, our tax money.
Right, But you know, it's still gonna be fine, it's just a matter of the money, you know, once transfers are made, and I can show, hey, I've got this much money in there now, we have this much money, I need your approval to spend it, and then the state will approve that additional appropriation.
Okay, so it's not
Yeah, I
necessarily a
can
cash
well,
problem, it's an
maybe-
appropriation problem.
It's an appropriation problem, it's not a cash.
Right, okay.
And it's just,
Good comment.
really, it's a matter of House Bill 1009 going through the process. We gotta go through the process for one time to see what works, what doesn't work, and that's where the state's at. They're already getting blasted by it, because every school corporation is having issues like this, in one way or another. So, well thought out, maybe. In some cases, the details, getting into the weeds, they didn't think about. And this is what we have to deal with because of it. We're not, it looks worse than it is, it's just we have to get through the rough first. Thank you.
Okay, we were in the middle of a personnel report, so
Okay, so,
that's all right.
I mentioned Diane Kane's retirement, Michelle Bagetto, and then the other, Valerie Smith, Ernie Pyle, elementary secretary treasurer, being on a full-time basis now due to the passing of Leslie Krockenberger. She was a temporary in there during the time, so. And finally, extracurricular, John Beardsley to serve as a girls' tennis coach, and Debbie Kuykendall to serve as a volunteer assistant. I ask your approval for the personnel report this evening.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve January's personnel report as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item, under presentations or reports, our monthly curriculum instruction assessment update. Dr. French.
Sorry about this. Nothing like being in front of a room.
Never fails.
Never fails. Anybody know what to do in this situation with our technical liaison? We can try to plug in.
Just talk it out.
Yeah, I could just talk through it, but it's all graphs and data, so I really want to be able to display for you. Let me run and see if I can you tether in? Connect. Yeah, I can go grab a cord. Yeah, it was working a little bit ago. The Apple TV? Andy is? Well, I provided you with a written report, but I'd really like to go over the graphic with you to make that possible. So we just finished our second round of NWEA testing. So I wanted to go through the results of that with you. Sorry, I know you guys want to get home and watch The Bachelor.
No,
Too much.
Try to make it.
America's Got Talent.
Yeah. Pretty well.
There's a lot of neat stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so I could just talk through some highlights and then I can show you the visual next month. And I'll also share it with you digitally. So we'll just roll with it. So we look at NWEA achievement, we look at two types of data pieces. So we look at our actual achievement and then we look at our growth. So each student is sent home with a report that shows where they are in reference to their peers in the district and where they are in reference to their peers in the nation. And so each parent receives that report. And so if we look at achievement, let's just try something else. Yeah, I'm not gonna waste our time, it's okay. So I'm just gonna give you some highlights and then you can see those. But comparatively to our national norms, our kindergarten is doing very well in both reading and math. So they are surpassing what the other kindergartners in our nation are doing. So that's really exciting. 5th grade is kind of a target where we're looking at that for some reason. They scored very low in math on the national average, but they are growing. So they are showing growth. So that's a good thing. So when we kind of see those kind of worry spots, we're flagging those with the principals, and then we're looking at what could be some contributing factors to the high growth, like in the kindergartner situation, or the low growth, as far as the 5th grade math goes. But for the most part, across the district, we have growth, and that's what we're really looking for, and that's what is so great about having now 2 points of data, which I wish I could illustrate for you. Because are our kids learning? Yes, and we can visually see that. And what else is great to see is our high school math, which we're all very concerned about, does not correlate with our ISTEP scores. We had 30% passing in our math, but when we look at NWEA data, our sophomores are neck and neck, same exact numeration as far as the national norms go on scores. And so that's a little bit of a difference that we're seeing, and one of the reasons that we're excited about that high school ISTEP test changing, because that is not a picture of what our students can really do. And so that's just some information just as far as the overall highlights, but we're gonna be targeting 5th grade math and 2nd grade reading for some of the low growth. So even though 2nd grade is on level with our national norms, we did not see as much growth between fall and winter as we'd like. So the principals and I will look at that and see if there's anything that's contributing to that or how we can support teachers and students. Does that make sense as a verbal explanation, because that's a very visual concept.
So you'll do the visual portion next.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and email it to you also so that you have that. Yeah. And I'm sorry about that. It was working at 5:30 or whatever before I left, 4:30. So. Any questions? I did also want to share with you our behavior interventionists. I asked the principals to look into their data since that's a new role, and their behavior referrals are down 25% from the first semester as compared to last year. And so they're definitely seeing a difference, a positive difference there. They've been a big support for our principals and our counselor, our behavior interventionists. That role is definitely working like we had hoped. Anything else? And please email me if you look at those graphs and have any questions ahead of time, and I'll
As you go through the year and make this report, is this the format you'll basically, are these the items we'll basically hit? Like, will we see more behavioral intervention? You know,
If you would like to, it's usually just whatever's prevalent at that time.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's something we hadn't talked about. We just finished first semester with it, so I wanted to kind of give you an update on how it's going.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah. Anything else?
When you talk about you're visiting, is it you
Yes,
who
ma'am.
visit every core subject class?
Yes, so I spent the past 2 weeks at Ernie Pyle and Van Dyne and been in every classroom visiting or observing their reading blocks, just to really gather data and see what teachers are using as far as curriculum resources, if they're following curriculum maps, or what supplies and resources that they're lacking or that they need. So it's been very eye-opening. There's some great things going on that get us really excited, and there's some things that we always see that we can work on, so making notes of those and how we can pull in professional development to support those areas. But once all of that information and data is gathered, I'll share that with you at our March report.
And they're announced visits, right?
Right.
You don't just talk in.
Right, yeah. So they know, on Tuesday at some point, I'll be in second grade. Yeah.
You know, I'll just make a general comment that time is of the essence. The clock's ticking. And these kids gotta be getting value every day, every day. I look at this like it's a 3, 4, 5 alarm fire. You've gotta be running hard, because once these kids lose that day, lose that week, lose that month, and they leave us, have we done our job? I mean, I hope you're looking at it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. And that's one of the things that also, with looking at our fifth grade math data, so I'm also making sure that I go in our fifth grade math classes and see what's going on there to really highlight that. Because, we talk about our math, our high school students struggling with math. That's not a problem that starts at the high school, that's a problem that starts at the elementary. And then every year, that gap widens. They get behind in second grade, then it's a little more in third, fourth, fifth, so on. And so that's why we really want to look at what we're using as our curriculum in elementary school, and we can definitely improve areas in our curriculum. So we want to make those changes and get recommendations in and research all that so that we can implement better curriculum going forward in 1920.
Well, these kids are the future of the United States, and the biggest nightmare I have sitting on this board is we didn't do our job to make sure that they're players in that future. And that's the seriousness, I think, that we need to be pursuing this.
Absolutely. Educators, we definitely realize the gravity of our role. I think our teachers do every day.
And I'm not saying we're not, I'm just saying that that's the way I look at it. By the way, there we go.
No, that's just a screensaver.
Okay. I thought we saw it stalled long enough that it,
Just a screensaver.
That would work. Okay, but I will email that to you, and then just email me if you have any questions before that. I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you, Dr. French.
thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Under the decision portion of tonight's agenda, first item is a recommendation on expulsion case number 05232005.
Members of the board, after holding an appeal request for expulsion case number 05232005 and hearing arguments, it is your position to make a final determination regarding the expulsion examiner's recommendation.
I move that the board uphold the expulsion examiner's decision in case number 05232005 and further suggest that the student's parents investigate and pursue alternative educational opportunities, for example, online learning for the duration of the expulsion.
So motion, second? Second. Any further, a motion and a second to approve the recommendation on expulsion case 05232005 as presented by Mrs. Corrado. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item, recommendation to approve board policy update, volume 31, number 1.
Members of the board, last month you received board policy updates for review. Tonight, we would like to present the updates for approval with one minor revision. We'd like to table at this time policy number 3220.02, supplemental payments for teachers, as this requires further discussion as to its implementation as well as budgetary concerns. We ask your approval of the policy updates, volume 31, number 1 this evening.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve board policy update, volume 31, number 1. As presented, any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item, recommendation to approve and accept donations at the high school totaling some $479.91.
Members of the board, your approval of donations to South Vermillion High School are requested this evening. Donations were for various groups and activities from community organizations, including the Clinton Optimist Club, Western Indiana Community Foundation, the Lift, White Construction, Tri-Kappa, and numerous individuals. The donations total $4,479 and a few pennies. Your approval is requested this evening.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the donation as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries 6-0, I abstain. Okay, next item, recommendation to approve student transfer request for the 2018-2019 school year.
Members of the board, you have in your board package recommendations for, excuse me, student transfers. These transfers have been approved at the building and district level and now seek approval.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the student transfer request as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next item is approval of field trips, of which we have an addenda.
Yes.
So we'll take them all in mass, including the one that was added by addenda.
Members of the board, the field trips outlined in your board packet, as well as the addendum tonight, require your approval as they are extended day or non-school days, and in one case requires an overnight accommodations. Your approval is recommended this evening for those field trips.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the field trips as presented, including the addenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. This brings us to we've concluded with the regular portion of tonight's agenda, which brings us to our last comments from citizens period. If anybody out the audience would like to address the board, now would be your final chance to do so. If you're interested in addressing the board, please stand, state your name for the record. Everybody don't jump so quickly. I know, it was a motley looking crew. It's pretty scary looking crew, as a matter of fact.
The back row.
It's kind of like the troublemakers, you know? Okay. All right, we'll close citizens' comment period and conclude with first Mr. Chapman's comments and then board member comments. Mr. Chapman?
Members of the board, you have in your packet this evening a letter from the Department of Education, which conducted the state mandated school safety audit for South Vermillion Community Schools this past week. The letter in your packet basically states that we are compliant in all our buildings as well as the corporation, and meeting with the contracted individual auditor, I guess I should say, for the DOE, was very impressed with our plans and what we have in place, and we are in good shape school safety wise. I will just say this, we've done a lot of work over the last few years, updating our safety and security for our schools. Are we satisfied at where we're at? No, but we're still working on it, and we are going to begin work in the near future so that we have ready for next school year a corporation-wide plan that encompasses all 5 buildings. And a couple of the things that we worked on here recently, getting ready for the audit, was certain protocols for certain situations, and we feel very confident in where we're at, and we're looking forward to putting that corporation-wide plan together in the coming months. Short and sweet for January. One other thing.
Oh, yeah?
I will probably be out of the office next week.
Next week.
Next week. I'll know more tomorrow morning, but I'll probably be out next week.
Yeah.
My superintendent designee is very happy that I'm here this evening. But Angie's very capable of taking over the reins while I'll be gone, so.
And she brought her assistant.
And we're not talking Micah.
Meeting's going downhill.
Yeah, real fast.
Trying to understand your place now, right?
Yeah. Alright. Mr. Hanner, anything you wanna mention before we conclude?
No, sir. Happy
Since
New
we're
Year.
privileged with your presence tonight? It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Alright. Mr. Cool.
I see Central School got a good workout with the snow, the playground did. They had about a 7 or 8 foot snowman.
Yeah,
out
they
there.
did.
That was nuts to the basketball ring.
That was huge.
That was good. The kids got to use that, got a good use of it.
How long did it take you to do that, Ryan?
I took a picture and sent it to him, says, you gotta see what they have there.
Need to put a basketball where it could be dunking it.
That was,
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. Mrs. Grotto?
I just have a concern. I wasn't here to make comments on, when we did the calendar and talked about our e-learning days. My concern is that the students that are at risk already, this is just gonna put them, I'm glad that we haven't had to use them yet, and hopefully we won't have to, especially consecutive. I know we're just planning to, but with reliability and access to the internet the way it is, I just wanted it to be on record that as they stand, the way that our grading is on the e-learning days, I would like for us to maybe relook that at some time in the future. I just don't think that students should be hurt, their grades hurt by e-learning days, especially the students that are at risk and already struggling. So that's all I have to say.
Alright, thank you. Mr. West?
No. Just Happy New Year.
Thank you. Mrs. Abe?
Jenny, I'm happy to see that the discipline referrals are down by 25%. That's good. This, that's got to be frustrating on the summary of growth results, where you've noted that a lot of the negative growth on the writing has to do with apathy in the high school. And I see that that's one of the things that you're going to do is, try to come up with ways to motivate that. But that's got to be hard. And it's just, I encourage you to really hang with that, because that's got to be seen as an opportunity, because we're not seeing what the kids know, and we're not able to show. So it's like, how do you inspire those kids to show what they know, do their best in high school? So good luck on that.
Thank you, Mrs. Abe. Dr. Hawkins?
I want to tag a little bit on Bonnie's statements, but we all know that the sustainable efforts that we make kindergarten through 4th grade down the road is where the payoff really is. It's so important to gather the data and to put sustainable strategies in place. So, from year to year we learn and do the same thing. So I've always said, you've got to fix these kinds of things early on, because they don't get better. Kids miss out. So I appreciate your efforts in that. And then also, I wanna just give a shout out to those folks who organize these field trips. I know how important these are to kids, and I know what a great learning experience it can be. So I appreciate that. And then I just had one other thing that came to my mind today. You know, we had talked before Mr. Tendera passed, that we would look into some kind of a shade structure out there by the tennis courts. It may not be exactly, you know, what he envisioned. That was a wonderful vision, but I think the really important thing they're looking for is some shade structure for people when they're watching tennis matches. So I'd hope we would kind of pick up on and look at that and work with John, and that's what reminded me to say that. So that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Mrs. Hill?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add is congratulations to Miss Kane,
Yeah,
34 years.
very good. I don't have anything further.
JP,
or-
I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
Don't forget about, we've been talked about the board out front where we put up what's going on in the school. We were gonna get one of those electric ones where you can do it and run all kind of stuff through there instead of just a few things.
I've talked with Mr. Schimmel and Mr. Terry about looking at getting sponsorships for that to help fund it, and I haven't heard anything since before Christmas, so.
Okay, well, we're looking at some possible corporate sponsorship. I think it's really,
I've been staying every meeting.
I think that is something we need to do though, because it's so difficult to keep up with that thing the way it is now, and who wants to go out there in this kind of weather and change it? So I'm
As long as they
hoping.
don't hack it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you heard stories about that?
Huh?
Have you heard stories?
Oh,
It's out there,
I've seen,
yeah.
I've
Stories
seen
out
that.
there.
Yeah.
They hack
Well, it's hard to hack this with Bitty Bear hang on.
Yeah.
But good point. Thank you, Larry. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Second?
So moved.
Stand adjourned.